I'm going to read out this excerpt Derek Fisher said on Byron Scott's Fast Break podcast. Here goes. So then when I kind of tapped into more of just as basketball fan when I watched the NBA today, I sometimes compare it to if, for those of you that remember when the WWE was WWF, I don't know if everybody remembers that, but there was a time where WWE was WWF. World Wrestling Federation, and then it shifted to World Wrestling Entertainment. Again, not right or wrong, because one could argue that the WWE is more impactful sport than the WWF was, depending on what side of the conversation you're on. I feel like all of pro sports to some degree, not just in NBA, even NFL. You listen to guys that played before, coached before. It's a different game, and it's not a negative thing. It is built more for the entertainment value, maybe than the competitive value. We, in previous generations, it was designed as though it was a battle, a war, gladiator, so to speak. And it doesn't mean the guys now aren't tough, they are soft. I'm not saying that. I know that this is said in some conversations, but that's not what I'm saying. But it's definitely a different way that they're able to show up and compete. I would say this is a great analogy from Derek Fisher because the WWE was different when they were known as WWF during the 80s and 90s. I remember that era because I grew up during the 90s. And I remember how much better WWF was back then compared to the modern day WWE. I just remember the storylines are great. It was fantastic. The wrestling talent seemed even better back then. And great, it wasn't real, it was fake. It just seemed more professional. That's what I would say. Much more professional than it does today. And the storylines were just better. It was just better. It was better organized. And it just seemed that Vince McMahon was putting out a great product every night, that he was trying to maximize the capabilities of making this worth watching for like 2 hours. Now, today, the WWE is not even as 1/10 as entertaining as, excuse me, what the WWF was during the 90s and the early 2000s during like the Attitude Era. It's completely changed. You may find one or two entertaining matches during the 2 hours of WWE Raw or SmackDown, but it's not worth watching or committing your time to. So I could definitely see that comparison. You could say the same about the current NBA, but one thing I'll say is that the WWE, they really rely on their legacy more so than putting out a great product. They rely on the past and just getting their past hardcore fans to watch their product and to get some new fans. But even the new fans, they're kind of selling them on the old legacy of the past of what once was, and trying to sell them that the current era can be even better than the past era. That sounds very familiar to me when it comes to the NBA. The NBA does the same thing, that they don't really pander to the past fans, the fans that grew up in past eras, whether it's my era, the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or even the 2000s. They really market towards just the young fans, the young adults who are still in their 20s, and just like kids and teenagers, and that's who they're trying to reach. And they sell the idea also that this is the best era ever, that it's better than the past eras. That's why you have the younger generation, I feel, always shitting on the previous eras, saying this era is better and whatnot. It's very familiar, but if you look at the product of the NBA, just like the WWE, that it's just relying, like I said, on past legacy, but it's not really better than what it once was in my eyes. And that's what they solely rely on instead of making it into a great product like they did during the 90s when it came to the great storylines and whatnot. And I do think they're really more focused on entertainment, in the sense that not so much the game being entertaining, but just off the court stuff, social media, all that drama and all that other stuff. And that's one thing I like to bring up with just Derek Fisher. Just you look at the Lakers he played on, the Kobe Shaq Lakers. To me, that was really the first team to usher in this era of like off-court drama in the NBA that's now prevalent today. Prior to them, you didn't really hear about the drama within the locker room and stuff that was going off the court and the tensions with teammates. Not to say it didn't exist, but it wasn't really mainstream before them. That's what I remember, because I remember those Laker teams really, really, really well because they won championships when I was in high school. So, but prior to that, you didn't really hear much or see much about tensions between teammates, all the other stuff. But then you had it with that Lakers team with Kobe and Shaq, always going at it through the media, having those big media wars of like the late 90s and early 2000s. Also, this is like before social media. Granted, we had the internet back then, but we didn't have social media like we have today. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have IG. We didn't have all those things back then. We just had the internet. We had websites still back then, and we had message boards. That was basically our social media. And even with that, the small amount of social media, that feud was huge. It was epic. I think the media loved that feud, if we're being honest. They say they didn't like it, but they really loved it because it allowed them to sell a bunch of stories and pressings. And I think that feud kind of set the NBA into the future, being more into like WWE type of stuff, like storylines off the court, into that type of entertainment, into that type of drama. If you think about it, you look at just even the show NBA Today, how much of it are they really talking about basketball when it comes to plays and just certain matchups and going in detail of the game? To me, it's more like the NBA's version of that old show Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood. So I definitely believe he's right about that. There's not really an emphasis on the game anymore, but just how popular certain guys are and just what they're doing off the court and just a few things about the game, some flashy moments of threes, dunks, but it's not really about the product anymore. So I definitely agree with him on that, but I would say his Lakers ushered in this type of era we have today where they started the craze with social media, a little bit before social media came out, and then other teams took it to another level. Especially, I would say LeBron ushered in like the modern day social media era when it comes to gossip and tabloids and all the other stuff when he joined Miami. But that's the point I wanted to make.